Hi guys, PJ here. Today I'm taking a look at the PC release of Dead Island 2. Is this a good port? Does it run well? How well does it run on Pacific System? Well, we'll have a look in detail. We're going to have MSI Afterburner running with a load of stats running at the side of the screen, showing you everything from FPS, GPU usage, memory usage for both normal memory and GPU memory, etc. You will see a lot of stuff there. We are running this on an RTX2060, that's 6GB GPU, and a latest generation i7 Intel CPU with 6GB of DDR4 RAM. The game's running off an internal NVMe, and we're recording to a separate internal SSD. Windows 10 Pro is installed on yet another SSD, so no slowdowns should occur from the recording software. It's NVIDIA software that we use in Shadowplay, so it does the job pretty well. When we load it in on this system, it defaults to high settings across the board without using AMD FSR. So let's have a look at the settings and see what it's all about. First up, we have control options. I'm happy to report that the game works well on Xbox Series controllers and also shows the correct prompts if you're using a DualSense controller from a PS5. No problems there. Obviously you can remap, well, everything. DualSense implementation, not really. It's just sort of got rumbles as normal. There's no specific thing that I detected using the PC version of the game, which is a shame, but still, it is what it is. Graphics options are pretty good. I wouldn't say they were fantastic, but they're not too bad. A lot of resolutions are supported, you know, your normal common ones such as 720p, 900p, 1080p, etc. You can also go for 2K or 4K resolutions. Pacific monitor I'm using on this game is a 1080p monitor, so couldn't try anything higher than that, but I did try it on another system that was running 1440p and it was fine. The frame rate lock does work on this game, it's pretty good, but without VSync on, as you would expect, you're going to get an awful lot of shuddering and stuttering, so you might want to lock it. As for whether it runs well, actually I think it does. I think it runs pretty damn well. I'm quite impressed with it, even without AMD FSR on, which does tend to put a bit of a shimmer on everything, so I do try not to use it. So like I was saying, everything was set to high as default for this system, and it did run very, very well. So what I'll do, I'll show it you running on its sort of default settings, and I'll also show it you running on low settings, and we'll take a look at the video memory and how it affects the FPS. Your FPS, you know, does go up quite substantially, as you can imagine, as you drop things down, but does the game suffer? Well, let's have a look. They're all your video options, so we'll move on from that now. The UI, fully customizable. You can remove things, add things as you wish. You can obviously change them. I left them on dynamic so that when sort of events kick off and things happen, you know, that part of the HUD would show up. I found it sort of better that way. It wasn't too cluttered. A lot of games have that much HUD going on, they're very, very cluttered. This worked pretty well. Audio, you'd be pleased to know, well, some of you will be pleased to know, especially if you're a Twitch streamer, etc., there is a streamer mode, so it disables all the copyright music in it, which is fantastic. Quite a few volumes and stuff like that. No surround sound though. This is just simply a stereo game left and right. I did try it on full surround, and it's definitely just a stereo game. There was no surround input whatsoever. Bit of a shame, because obviously it's a disaster scenario in a city. You could have had burning effects behind you. I think, to be honest, the Battlefield series is still king for the surround sound effects, but you know, completely different sort of game going on there. And we've got this weird Alexia game control going on. Now, I've not seen this personally in a game before, but you've got voice commands and capture mode commands and input. And I am assuming, I have not tried this, but I'm assuming you could run Alexa for music while playing the game. I can only, you know, guess that would work. Like I say, I've not tried it. I'm not going to faff around trying to connect an Alexa to it to figure that one out. But hey. Then you've got your game type. This is good. You can have private lobbies with your friends only, single player, and of course matchmade as well. The game starts you in a crashed plane because, well, the zombie outbreak, you're evacuating somewhere, and as you can imagine, somebody gets bit on the plane crashes, and then you've got hordes of ex-passengers. What you're seeing now is the default settings that the game asks you to play it in, which is high with VSync on. So it's locked to 60 frames per second. We're using 12 gigabytes of RAM and we're using 3.7 gigabytes of VRAM. GPU running at sort of 85% sort of max, that's its upper bounds that it uses. It runs well across all the cores of the CPU, no problems, pretty good. So it auto detected correctly is what I'm saying, and I'm sure you'd agree, it looks nice. A bit later on when you start seeing houses and shadows from palm trees and stuff, it does look good. The default settings are very, very impressive. Let's move on to where we remove VSync and some other things and see what happens. This is your first proper location, this nice sunny villa with dead people everywhere, and you've got some nice palm trees and things like that cracking off here. And it's basic stuff, get the circuit breaker, open the gate, go in, but we're here to look at graphics and how well the game runs. Well, like I was saying, we're still sort of on the locked setting here, but if I show you where we're currently at under display, there we go, VSync is on. We're going to turn that off so you can get a true FPS representation, and we'll put frame rate to unlimited. It caps at 240. Advanced, here we go, there's your default settings, so we're all high. Okay, let's take it off and see how it runs. So 79, 73 FPS there, 4 gigabytes of VRAM being used, 98% GPU. So a GPU limited because the CPU is only running, I think I saw 50% there, something like that. So a GPU limited at this state, which you would expect. And it's a bit shuddery, stuttery. You know, I wouldn't personally play it like this. It does need VSync engaged. So let's try tweaking it a bit. Okay, we are now going to go for low settings across the board. A lot of games, obviously, that makes it look really muddy and, to be honest, not very nice. This game wasn't too bad. The most noticeable thing, in my opinion, was shadow quality. The detail was still there, as you can see from the paving, but shadows and the drop-off distance for the shadows was quite alarming. If you look at the palm trees on the floor, they're all meant to have the separate leaves showing, but unless you got very, very near to them, they were just a blob. So you can see a blob, and then you can see the draw distance. You can actually see it drawing in. That's quite distracting. So although low is very good, I mean, we got 120 FPS there. We got 3.2 gigabytes of VRAM being used. So if you've got an old GTX 970 with 3.5 gigabytes of VRAM, you're laughing, you can do this. But I'd probably put your shadows on medium rather than low. So, you know, there's a lot of playability and things that you can do with it. You've also got your AMD FSR that you can turn to if you're struggling with FPS. And things like volumetric lighting and reflections hit your FPS very hard, so obviously you can turn that type of thing down as well. They're the first things to hit, shadows and reflections, in fact, I would say. There you go, you got the draw distance going on that you can see there as I'm walking backwards and forwards to this shadow. It is very, very near, but the game still looks okay. So moving on to a little bit of combat to see if the FPS drops and how well AMD FSR actually works. So if we go back into display, and we're going to keep our frame rate there on unlimited. We're on high, yeah, these are the default settings for the machine, as I was saying. We've popped a few bits up to ultra though. Now, you don't need ultra textures. I looked at them before and after between high and ultra, and I personally could not tell the difference. We are at 1080p though. You might be able to tell the difference obviously at 1440p or at 4K. So these are the tweaks to gain a bit back. We've got view distance at medium, and we've got a few other bits sort of medium and high. It gives a nice balance and a nice look overall at 1080p, in my opinion. Like I say, I've tried quite a few other different setups, and this worked for me. So in game, what does it look like if we run this? And like I say, you've got the quality setting here on the AMD FSR. You've also got performance setting as well, but performance setting made it look really, really fuzzy and grainy, so I wouldn't recommend using it. This is quality setting. Let's get some combat going. First thing that I noticed on this was motion blur. It's very exaggerated. I don't know if you'd want to turn that down. Some people are a bit nauseous to motion blur, but it was extreme, and obviously with VSync not being on at times, it was a bit off. So running it with VSync on and the mixture of the settings that I've got there, we're running 5 gigabytes of VRAM, which is under the 6 gigabyte limit. The game's running nicely because, like I say, we have got the AMD FSR quality on and we've got VSync enabled as well. Overall, I
I think this is actually a pretty good PC port. I've tried it on two different setups. I've tried it on a Ryzen 7 2700 and a 1660 Ti. Also ran very well on it. Bit of a shame that there's no DLSS, but this is an AMD sponsored game, so a bit lacking there, I'm afraid. But yeah, runs really well, plays really well, and to be honest, I'm quite interested in actually playing it as a game. Seems interesting enough. You know, maybe wait for a sale, pick it up, put it in your backlog. Guys, that's everything from me. Hopefully this was helpful to somebody out there. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.